Welcome again to everybody, 22 minutes late. But we're going to go ahead and we're all grateful, I guess, that Georgian College is not on strike, and that's good news. And I wanted to introduce to you Fatima Bakker. I have never met her, but she works with Scion Group, and they have been busy doing a housing study for Georgian, and that has been top of mind for us for quite a while. So I don't know what stage this study is at, but Fatima, I'm going to give the floor to you, and you can tell us all about what you're up to.
Thank you. What an exciting morning.
Sorry about that.
No, exciting is good. Keeps everyone on our toes. Like Claire said, my name is Fatima Bakker. I am the director for the Scion Group. Excited to be invited to this meeting. As said, we are conducting the market demand analysis for Georgian College at 4 campuses, Barrie, Orangeville, Owen Sound, and Aurelia. Excuse me. And so part of that analysis is taking a look at really understanding the student needs and demand for housing on and off campus, getting a sense of what are some of the challenges students are facing as they're looking for housing when they do choose to attend Georgian College. And as you can imagine, there's many other amenities and services that go along with students' housing needs. So, access to transit, access to grocery stores, some of the other amenities that students, find vital to have as they're living in these cities. And so where we are in the process at the moment is we've done a lot of the data gathering. So we've done some focus groups. In fact, we're doing this as well at some of these campuses. These are student focus groups. And so we're hearing directly from, all types of students, domestic, international, all year students, from all programs, getting a sense of, what their feedback is in terms of their challenges that they're facing. And also gathering feedback through a survey, which we've already conducted. This was an online survey, and we had a great response to that. We also did stakeholder interviews and meetings with Georgian folks and also some external folks, the city, so that part of the process has really been done. And so, we're really at the point where as soon as the focus groups are finished, we'll be working at, start analyzing further and start writing.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that update. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Fatima?
Fatima, can I ask what your survey has revealed so far about housing and amenity needs for students? Like what sticks out in your mind that really seemed important? Like so many students mentioned a certain thing.
Yeah, I think the affordability aspect is really sensitive, topic for students here. Not having access to affordable housing, but also just the lack of listings that are available to students. And therefore they're having to densify in basements and have, more than the number that's safe for them to be living with, kind of packed up in rooms. And so I think that the challenge of affordability and just the availability of housing seems to be one of the main issues for students.
Okay.
Any other questions? When do you expect your work to be finished?
Typically, by the time we're done data gathering, and taking from a month and a half to 2 to get our draft report out. And so that's probably the timeline we were looking at.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm just curious what what are the results of this work intended to influence or communicate towards?
I think part of that is, for Georgian to decide what they'd like to do with the result. The intention is really to have this conversation be a conversation starter for internally within Georgian, but also externally within the city, to have a larger conversation around how can we better accommodate students that are coming to Georgian. How can we better accommodate their needs? What are some of the challenges that they're facing today and how it could be fixed? So I think that conversation, unlike some of the other schools that we work at, where it is just an internal conversation, it is just within the school, they'll kind of have these discussions and try to implement changes over the next few years. I think at Georgian, it's a unique situation where there are external parties involved who could make that impact in student living and just the student life of students at Georgian. So I think it's really trying to get this information out to the other parties as well, and kind of see, hey, like, these are the challenges students are facing, what can we do about it?
So if I could ask a follow-up, I guess, is there a potential or a possibility that the outcome will be that there's a recognition that Georgian should be providing housing for their students rather than relying on the community to do it for them?
So we're, the part of it is splitting demand and understanding that we will be providing, a number of beds that we kind of anticipate are needed in order to accommodate the demand for Georgian College, whether that's accommodated by Georgian themselves or whether that's accommodated with somebody off campus. That's kind of in Georgian's court to kind of figure that out.
Final question: are you looking at like land use, particularly land use of the college and the land that they own and the potential for redevelopment or additional development on their properties?
No, unfortunately, that's not part of our scope of work with Georgian.
Thank you.
All right, Rob. Good questions. I was interviewed as one of the external folks. And I told the interviewer plainly that I felt that Georgian should build about 1,000 beds on site. That way they could start to accommodate some of their students. But I think it's tough because you're absolutely right. There's a whole affordability question. And then there's also the question of what is it that students really want? What kind of accommodation? And I'm sure that there's quite a number of them that really don't want to be on campus, that would prefer to be part of the community. So how best do we do that? So any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you very much, Fatima. That's very helpful. And we definitely will look forward to seeing your final report. Like you say, it's going to be a conversation starter. And I'm sure that conversation will carry on for a while. So thanks. Mm-hmm. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, or you're welcome to do what you need to do for the rest of the morning. So thanks. All right. Moving on then, the next item on our agenda has to do with the motions that we were discussing last time, and we did not have quorum last meeting, so we messed around with them a little bit, improved them a bit, and now they're back here for discussion. They were circulated to everybody, but just for the record, I will read the motions as they stand. The first one is that staff in the Legislative and Court Services Department, in consultation with the Anti-Racism Task Force, revise the discretionary committee application procedures and policies to encourage and recruit a greater diversity of membership on the city committees and report back to General Committee. So in layman's terms, we now have a process whereby we appoint committees as council. And this committee is one of them, and there, the sustainability committee, there's other ones. as well. We have a procedure for that, an application form, and what this motion is directed towards is to encourage or to have our Legislative and Court Services Division, which is basically our clerk's department, to have a relook at that whole process in order to create greater diversity on the committees. What we'll do is we'll take these motions one at a time. So on that one, let's have any questions or discussion.
I just wanted to say that I think at the initial meeting, which was attended by Donald Carty of the Anti-Racism Task Force, Donald offered the task force assistance in the selection process. Maybe we could offer some input to add more diversity to your selection process. We on the task force come from a pretty diverse background. We come from diverse backgrounds, so maybe our input can be of assistance. So Donald's offer still stands with the task force. We're still open if you need our help.
And frankly, that's exactly what the motion says. It says in consultation with the Anti-Racist Task Force, because I think, yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for our clerk's department to work on this in the absence of input from others that are very much vested in this. All right, any further discussion on this one?
I have a point. Sorry, Claire, I just pulled it up here, and you had said that that's what the motion said, but actually I'm seeing that it just is referencing encouraging and recruiting, but not the term selection is not in that motion, as Massa had interestingly brought up.
All right.
I'm not sure that council selects the committee members. I think all we can attempt to influence with our motion is how it's promoted to the general public to have them apply to the committee. I don't know that we can influence the actual committee person selections, because that will be a function of the to be elected incoming council.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Rob. You're right. We definitely would like to influence the council to select the right people. But I think if we can get the right people in front of council, then it's up to the elected to decide who they put on these committees. All right. Any more comments, questions, thoughts? All right, seeing none, I'll put the question. Those in favor, raise your hand. All right.
I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. Any opposed?
I'm in favor.
Okay, all right, thank you. That carries. So just for the process, so that everybody understands, these motions, our minutes all go to the Corporate and Finance Committee of Council, and then on to Council itself. That's the process, and eventually Council will adopt them or not, but that's how it gets to Council. The second motion that we have is that staff in the Development Services Department, in consultation with staff in the Legislative and Court Services Department, review the regulations associated with BLRs and possible ways to increase compliance with zoning and licensing requirements, and report back to General Committee. All right, this is somewhat related to the first one, but it's also independent. And it arose from our discussions before, where there is a sense that a lot of our international students, not all of them by any means, but some of them struggle with housing, and they struggle because landlords are doing things that are contrary to bylaws, and I'm sure I don't have to remind Mike Gallagher of that. There's an awful lot of that kind of thing going on, and so this motion directs our staff at the city to take a look at how they might be able to improve the regulations associated with BLRs. And BLRs are boarding, lodging, and rooming houses. And how we either change the bylaws or change how we enforce them to increase compliance. Because the bylaws right now, are all there. And what we find a lot is that they're largely ignored, and then enforcement is sometimes challenging. So that's the sort of the background for that motion. Any questions, comments, or thoughts?
Claire, I just have a question. I feel like when we initially discussed this, I know it's a few meetings ago, so my memory could not be clear, but I felt like, so the motion includes the word compliance. And I feel when we discussed this initially, it was more about how could we use things like the calendar and to help educate new members of the community as to what are sort of the rules and regulations as it comes to property management. I feel like it was less about like finding new ways to enforce. I think it was more about finding ways to educate the renters who may not actually know what the rules are, or the fact that we have recycling in the first place, or that we have a green bin program. I feel like the conversation was more centered around that.
Well, and in fact, last meeting we did have some discussion right around that as well, and there was a discussion of how our communications team could team up with Georgian to put those messages out. And that's certainly something that, and I think that's exactly what they're doing at this point, is to try to connect with students in terms of making them aware of what their obligations are and what they should be looking for. And that's not really something that we can put in a motion. I mean, that was an introduction that we made at the last meeting. We didn't have a quorum, but at least that is in process, as I understand it. And then this is much more to take a look at how can we be more supportive, if you will, around just simply the housing piece, as opposed to sort of property management kinds of things.
I guess I'm a little unclear. It feels perhaps like this is a little bit redundant, because it didn't council pass a motion late last year, basically directing bylaw to they were going to hire new enforcement officers, and they were going to move to a proactive approach instead of a complaint-based approach. Is that not something that kind of would cover this already?
They did in fact do that, but that approval was somewhat more limited. It was limited to property standards only. So it wasn't to do with whether the BLR was in compliance with zoning or any of those kinds of things. So it had more to do with the external of the building, and yeah, it's basically enforcing the existing property standards rules that we have. This asks staff to have a look at the bylaw itself and any regulations associated with it. And it may well be that staff says, hey, we have the perfect bylaw. There's nothing more that we could do to improve it. And I think, part of it is, are our current bylaws appropriate? And then if they are, how do we make them work better? Does that sort of respond to your question, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not entirely certain that this is a necessary motion, but I understand where you're coming from.
Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion? Thank you, Judy. Rob?
I'm going to vote against it.
You are. Okay. That's fine. So we have Judy in favor. Rob opposed. All right, I'll break the tie. I'm in favor. All right, so that carries then. All right, and then the final motion that we had, and this came out of our meeting last time. It wasn't 2 meetings ago. And sometimes we have very good discussions, notwithstanding the fact that it's not a formal meeting. And that motion is that staff and Access Barrie, in consultation with the Anti-Racism Task Force and the County of Simcoe, investigate opportunities for the City of Barrie to participate in the quotation marks "It Starts With Me" initiative and report back to General Committee. And just by a bit of background, and I'm not sure, I think it was you, Rob, that raised this suggestion. So maybe you should talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So the It Starts campaign is something that exists not just in Simcoe County, but also outside of Simcoe County. It is a formal period of recognition that I believe the college also participated in on a formal level. The county have a specific page on their website discussing it. It's kind of like the It Starts Here, which is like an Australian anti-racism campaign. We don't have that particular page or an endorsement of this particular program within the City of Barrie's website. So my hope was that the City of Barrie could adopt it as well, and then we, work in partnership with the county and the college and everybody else locally who was already part of the It Starts campaign.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's curious. I mean, the County of Simcoe definitely has a page, and they actually have some programming that goes with it. So there's no reason why the city shouldn't tie into that and support it. Any other discussion?
I have a question for Rob. How would you compare the It Starts With Me initiative with the current It Starts campaign from Simcoe County?
Rob?
Sorry, Judy, I missed the first part. Could you repeat that for me?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what the difference is between, or like just what the comparison is between the It Starts With Me initiative and the current It Starts campaign, which has been going on for a number of years with Simcoe County.
No, they're the same thing, but the city doesn't officially participate. So this is a motion asking the city to look into formally participating in the same program as the county.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Any more discussion? All right, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Judy?
Aye.
You are? Everybody is? Okay. Thank you very much. That carries. So those 3 motions are going to go on to Corporate and Finances meeting. And yeah, we'll hear from them. I think what it is great, because I think what happens is that we don't have these kinds of anti-racism kinds of discussions at council very often. I mean, the Anti-Racism Task Force does report to council, and it does come up from time to time, but I think this actually, it's high time that we get this kind of thing in front of council every once in a while, just to raise the profile of it. So appreciate that very much. All right, so the next item on our agenda is updates from Georgian College. See Todd here. The only update I think is that they're not on strike. But Todd, your floor is yours.
Yeah, so I mean, just an update as well with the protocol. So with the restrictions, some of the restrictions being lifted, the college still has their procedures in place. So we are still requiring vaccine passports as well as masking, et cetera, at the college. So we have no change there, but we will be changing, looking at adjusting some of the protocol for the spring, summer semester. And that's about it.
All right. And when does the spring summer semester start, Tom?
I just believe it's in May, start of May, end of April, May.
All right. Any questions, thoughts for Todd? No? All right. City updates. Who wants to go first? Jeff.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, just touch base on some of the initiatives the city's currently has out in the field, one of them being our radar message boards. We currently have a location out on Grove Street, east of eastbound on between Duckworth and Cook. It's been there for approximately, I think, about 6 to 7 weeks right now, and currently we're seeing it's recording speeds around 34 kilometers an hour is the average speed, and the 85th is at around 44, which is right within the kind of the range that we like to see. Our second board within Ward 1 is on Cook Street for southbound between Grove and Steele. Average speed is 28 kilometers an hour, and the 85th percentile is currently at 46. Previously to that, we had a board on Codrington Street and Blake Street as well. Codrington Street, the average speed was like 40, and the 85th was around 50. And Blake Street, the average speed was 39, and the 85th percentile speed was 54. So those will be currently in those locations on Grove and Cook for approximately another 2.5, 3 months until June, when we'll get our contractor to relocate them to 2 other locations within Ward 1. Other than that, staff are actively working on our locations to propose to council, to yourself, Claire, for the temporary speed cushions. We hope to be finalizing our list within the next few weeks, and then reaching out to yourself and other ward councillors. We're looking again this year to have 8 locations throughout the ward. So it's been always a popular endeavor for the city and residents. And we're going to also be evaluating our permanent speed cushions that we have throughout the city, including Ward 1. So bike lanes, we're looking to put our bike lane in on Johnson Street this summer. We'll be working with our contractors and city staff to install the signs and pavement markings. Other than that, that's about all I have from a traffic perspective as it relates to those 2 topics.
Thank you. I have.
Sorry, go ahead, Claire.
No, go ahead, Jude.
Actually, this isn't really town and gown related, but just for interest sake, because it's an area that I happen to live in. I'm curious about Codrington. When you said, like, say, an average speed, was that on like which side of Codrington, and also before or after speed cushions?
It would have been after speed cushions were installed. I believe the location was
Vancouver Street.
Yeah, I was going to say west of Puget, in around there.
I'd love to see it on the other side of Codrington, where I almost get hit trying to cross the street most days of the week.
Is that west of Duckworth?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I believe that's still Ward 1, is it not?
West of Duckworth is Ward 2, I'm afraid.
Ward 2. Okay. Yeah, I mean, those are locations. What we usually do is we work with the ward councillor to, we usually reach out to request that they propose us locations. Sometimes in the odd event, we don't get feedback. We then propose locations. So definitely, Judy, we can, if we don't have anything from Councillor Elwin, we can propose that for sure.
And
I would make a point of that.
I personally
there's
would love to. Oh, sorry, Claire.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Miss.
This is separate from town and gown too, but with the Ann Street Bridge reconstruction, the traffic on Shirley Street and Letitia is really bad. People go drive too quickly because they're just using it as a detour. It's pretty hazardous. I don't think speed bumps would work on Letitia because the city buses have to go through there to detour the Ann Street Bridge, but maybe on Shirley. Shirley doesn't have sidewalks. There's a lot of walkers, including myself, and dog walkers. And I used to jaywalk at Sunnydale and Shirley. I don't do it anymore. It's too hazardous. People are in a huge hurry just to cut through. And I would love to see speed bumps on Shirley just to slow people down until the Ann Street Bridge is completed.
Well, I can tell you that there is a place on the city website where you can make suggestions for speed bumps, and the maps are there, and you can see where the suggestions are. Speed bumps are an ever popular topic every spring, I must say. And as a counselor, I'd like to have, instead of 8, I'd like to have 80, but therein lies the problem.
You'd like to have how many, Councillor Eden?
80.
80, yes. You'd like to have the whole lot for the city.
I have some positive feedback about the one on Codrington at Dundonald, I believe it is. That's my saving grace. It has been so effective. I know it was huge demand from the local residents, but I think it's really improved my quality of life.
Oh, good.
That's great.
Oh, good. And Jeff, are you looking at permanent speed bumps as well this year?
Yes, we do. I believe there is some money in the budget. We do have some money left over from last year. There's not enough there to go around to all the wards, so we're just kind of we have to figure that out from a staff perspective, how we want to advance the program in that sense. But we have found it to be definitely a positive impact, and anytime we can do anything permanently and 12 months a year is a positive thing for the city. So we're trying to evaluate moving forward, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm suggesting actually that you start with Ward 1 and then move up to Ward 2 when you look at putting more permanent ones in.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that strikes me as odd, I think the Codrington ones seem to be working pretty well. But the one that strikes me as odd is the one on Hanmer, where, I do drive there and I just drive around it, and I see everybody does. So it's like, it's a bump, but doesn't do much.
So we are going to be, there was the roads being resurfaced with bike lanes in 2022. So that project we had thought was going to go in 2021. So we were anticipating the bike lane to be installed, and we didn't want to have the speed cushion within the bike lane. That road resurfacing got pushed to this year. So what we're looking at potentially doing in the interim before it gets resurfaced is install a collapsible bollard at the edge of the road, edge of the cushions themselves, similar to what we do in the temporary locations, so that it'll strongly discourage people to go around it. But you're exactly right. People definitely skirt around them if they can. So we're well aware of that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks for that, Jeff. Michael.
From a zoning end, so far this year, we've had just over 200 zoning complaints. About just probably 55% of those have been in the Northeast End. Mostly they've been about properties not maintaining their required landscape space. So the storage of vehicles on people's front lawns. And this time of the year where things are getting a little bit warmer, we're seeing that's caused some pretty significant damage to these landscape spaces. So we're trying to get a hold of that. The staff and development services, not specifically myself, mostly our planners, but we have started working on a new zoning bylaw to go along with the new official plan. It's still in the very early stages of that, but it's something that has finally begun to be in the works, which is good news. And to maybe comment on the second motion that we were speaking about today, 40 lodge rooming houses are one of my top priorities to be discussed for the new zoning bylaw. So maybe that will have some more in-depth discussions because of that.
Yes, I think it's definitely due to have some discussion how we manage those better. And zoning is probably one of the bluntest tools that we have, so it's not very effective. All right. Any questions or comments from Michael? All right. Carrie, anything you want to tell us, or we?
Our crews have been out in what we're calling the crew assessment for risk reduction. So if you happen to see any fire crews around late last year in multi-unit residentials, mid, high-rise type properties, our crews were out doing inspections of the common areas because we were still in COVID. So we were making sure that the records of the buildings were current, that the property owners' contacts were good, and that all of the exit signs, emergency lighting, doors, stairwells, everything was clear and operating as designed in those buildings. And also allowed our crews to do pre-planning. So it's always good to know what the building looks like before there's a crisis and you're not sure what it looks like. So that we did 126 properties throughout the city. And we have expanded it now that things are opening up to include commercial properties. So if you see fire trucks out in multi-unit commercial properties, they're doing the same thing to make sure that they have a good sense of the building, that our contacts are up to date, and that the buildings themselves are in compliance with the fire code. So that's the main things that we're doing that would possibly impact people here on this session. And public education is always happening, so stay tuned for that.
Thanks, Carrie. Any questions, comments for Carrie? All right. All right. You're doing low-rise, medium-rise buildings at the moment, or you did them. Are you moving that down to townhouses or small apartment buildings, or like sixplex or walk-ups or anything like that?
We did quite a few of those. We will continue to keep them adding into our repertoire to keep our crews going so that they get a nice combination of properties. We can't do townhouses themselves are single family dwellings. So it's a bit of unless there's common areas, hallways, things like that, it's a bit intrusive for firefighters to enter your property and do a full inspection. So we are keeping it to the multi-unit places to make sure that you educate people on how to be safe inside their unit, but make sure when they exit the door, they have two ways out, what to do in the fire alarm, that the elevators will actually not work, so you'll have to take the stairs. And to know that, because a lot of people move into these multi-level places and then don't realize if they have mobility challenges or something, that the elevator won't be available to them in the event of an emergency. So then if it's over 6 stories, shelter in place, but if it's under 6 stories, you need to come up with an evacuation plan.
All right. Okay. Any other questions for Carrie? Thank you, everybody. All right. Any other items that we should talk about a minute, because we've come to the end of our agenda. All right. Well then, our next.
Sorry, Claire. I just I know because we unfortunately started late with the tech issues, but just for reflection over the next month, because it's something that I would like to bring up and have a discussion about, are some things like directly related to students, and we're having an upcoming local election. So having some kind of campaign or education opportunity to introduce the college community to like what is local governance in Barrie, whether that's like a video that gets posted somewhere, but they're going to see signs everywhere, this summer. And it's a great way to feel included in at least the knowledge of the process. And then something else, I know we started talking about it a while ago, but actually looking at what is like how can we set up the next town and gown committee for, success, building on what this group has done over the last few years and thinking about the purpose and the scope, and then reflecting that in the the makeup of the committee and what kind of experience or representation that we might see as useful going forward, because the makeup was decided many, many years ago when the world was a little different, and so was our college city relations.
Yeah. All right. Well, there we have 2 agenda items for the next meeting right off the top. And I really like your suggestion about the election. Are you thinking about the provincial election or the municipal election?
Municipal.
Yeah, I think that's wise. And I think that's a great idea. Even if it's just education, but certainly involvement would be wonderful. Absolutely. So we'll add those 2 items to our agenda. Any other things that we want to talk about? All right. Well, you always have my email address, so you can always email me between meetings if that works. And Randy will add those 2 items to our agenda for next time. All right. Anything else? All right. Then we're adjourned at 11:04. Thank you very much for attending and putting up with our technical problems to start with. So, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks, Claire.
Yeah.
Bye,
Have
everyone.
a great day, everybody.
Thank
Yeah.
you.